going to try and talk about people we haven't talked about. But it's
Hello, humans. Yeah. Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Gen X Music. That's right, the MTV music of the 1980s. And once again, we are here with a pillar of the show, the man himself, the one that has over 20 years of experience in the music business. That is the Rambling Man. Sir, how are you?
I'm a bit sad, as you know,
I
Gen
know.
X. My football team has just lost.
Yes.
I'm heartbroken.
Yes.
I'm on the alcohol. I'm a little bit drunk. And I'm going to get more drunk as we go along this afternoon.
Yeah, you know what? Cheers to you. Here we go.
Oh, I love that. I love that beer. We don't get that here anymore. Oh, wow.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. Yeah.
Oh, is that how you say it?
All right. So 1984 was a huge year for music. You know, in here in the U.S., I don't know how it was in England, but here in the U.S., it's actually regarded like one of the biggest years in music and pop. And they just call it pop, you know, but there was just so much out there, all types of music. So I really want to first start with the actual music itself, because a lot of these songs are going to take us back, and it's a coming of age for me in 1984. And I don't know how it was for you, but a lot of it has to do with experiences as well as the music.
Yeah. Well, 1984, the year of Gremlins and Terminator and Ghostbusters. So it was a good year for film.
For film too.
It was a big year. Albums wise, well, it's difficult to not touch on some of the artists that we've already touched on. Really, the Smiths had 2 albums out that year. They had the Smiths, and Hatful of Hollow. Hatful of Hollow being a collection of lots of different things they did on John Peel Show, but that was definitely my album of 1984. 100%. Blew everything away. How Soon Is Now, the song off of that.
Oh, man.
That just plays into an aching teenager's heart. Just the lines from "There's a club where you got to go."
Yes.
Etc. Etc. Wow.
You want me to tell you how I discovered the Smiths? I started working earlier, as a kid when I was 12. But in 1984, I was able to now properly get a job at the mall, legally, right?
Right.
Before then, I had just been working for cash, and I walk in there, and there's this girl working there, Hispanic girl, and she is 100% bought into Susie and Banshees, right? And she is just gorgeous, she is like a gorgeous 17-year-old girl. And at this point, I'm more listening to, what's popular music. You remember breaking? There was a lot of breakdancing. Breaking the movie was out. I mean, there's a lot of things were happening. But she started introducing me into alternative music, and she was just gorgeous. I just wanted to stare at her, and have her play her music. And she introduced me to the Smiths. And boy, was it ever life-changing for me.
Should have married her. You should have married her. You found a good one there.
Yeah, I mean, she was a lot older than I was. You know what I'm saying? I mean, she was gorgeous.
Better, Gen X. Even better.
Yeah, she was out of my league at that point. But let me tell you, she was one beautiful gal. I can tell you that.
Right.
But yeah, you mentioned it. So you have the Smiths.
They were just my number one that year. They just for me, they dominated everything that year. I mean, like I said to you before, I was into a lot of hip hop and electro and stuff like that, but which we mentioned in the last episode. But it really was the year of the guitar for me, 1984. I went back to the guitar, I think. So the Smiths, Talk, which you played on one of your most recent shorts.
Yes.
Again, yes. You preempted me again.
And that was straight out of MTV. That's where I heard that song.
Oh, such a good band. So a couple of other ones. And again, I don't know if you've heard of these. The Cocteau Twins, or the Cocteau Twins. A guitar band from Scotland with the most amazing singer. A singer called Liz Fraser. She's kind of like our generation's, or their generation, should I say, Kate Bush. She's very similar in her vocal style to Kate Bush. Her phrasing and everything. They had an album called Treasure. Now, please, anybody who kind of likes really kind of ambient-y and just beautiful singing. She's got a gorgeous voice. If I went to heaven and her voice wasn't being projected at me as I go up those stairs to the pearly gates, I'll be so disappointed. She's got a voice of an angel. So that was another big album for me.
Well, I had hope. I had hopes of heaven before 1984.
Yeah, me too. But you would tell me all about that, with God. I think the other big one for me that year was a band. Again, you may not have heard of, a Scottish band called the Blue Nile, and they had an album called Walk Across the Rooftops. It's the most lushly produced album. It's like smooth as silk. Late night, almost kind of not jazzy in any sort of way, but it's a mood setter, an absolute mood setter of an album. They only made 3 albums. All of them are just absolutely gorgeous. I fortunately saw them live. They didn't play live very often. So, 3 not particularly well-known bands. I mean, Smiths obviously being, and also REM, The Reckoning, that came through that year.
Yes.
And I got to see REM a couple of times and always enjoyed their stuff. And what was the other one about? And again, an album called Swoon by another band that you probably never heard of, called Prefab Sprout, which is a really good name. Again, a guitar band. Again, just really nice mood. I think it speaks to the teenager in you. A lot of love songs, a lot of, yearning, all those feelings you get as a teenager. You want a woman, you want to keep hold of a woman, all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that hits you when you go through those growing pains. You know what I mean?
When I was growing up, all those songs, even the Smiths album was something that I would listen to privately, and we all would listen to them privately. But at school and in social events, we didn't even look like we listened to the Smiths,
No.
But there was a lot of music that came out that year. And, I pulled up a list of just alternative music, what was called here alternative music. And it's stuff that we've never heard before, and stuff that mostly, like I told you, was coming through MTV. As I told you, I'm a huge Billy Idol fan, right? I was listening to Blue Highway, Eyes Without a Face, those type of tunes.
Yeah.
But then we got something completely different. And I remember it's the first time that we heard the Bronski beat, I believe it's Small Town Boy.
I've got that down on my singles list, right? Because I was wondering if you picked up on that, because you talked a lot about Depeche Mode and you talked about Yazoo.
Yes.
Bronski beat are definitely along that same line, aren't they? They're a really good electronic pop band. Yeah, I really used to like Bronski beat a lot, actually. And Small Time's a good tune, and they didn't have that much music because they split up quite quickly, and the lead singer left and another lead singer came in, and it all got a bit, messy and what have you. But yeah, I was interested to see if you'd picked that up on that, so I'm glad you did. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, we started going to, what ended up happening in Los Angeles, even though we're a lot of us were 15, 16 years old, what have you.
Yeah.
A lot of underground clubs specifically for teenagers started coming out, right? That's summer. And we were having a lot of house parties during the day, and then during the night we would go out, to these nightclubs, and and there was so many things coming out, on MTV that we would dance at night with, songs like was that Ultravox, Dancing with Tears in My Eyes was one of them. I remember.
Another big electronic band,
yeah, those are things that we would play in the nightclub, but not necessarily during the day. During the day, it was the more, more the pop music that we were listening to, right?
Yeah. Well, it was a great year for pop. You had people coming through, like Bronx Pet Shop Boys. That was the year their first single, West End Girls. Another great British electronic band. So they just kicked up in '84. You had things like Frankie Goes to Hollywood, which I don't know.
Relax.
I mean, was that massive over there?
You know what? It didn't get popular until actually Duran Duran started talking about them.
Oh, right.
Because Duran Duran was really big over here, and Duran Duran spoke about Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and then they started bringing in the clubs, and hits like Relax and You Spin Me Right Round.
I've got that
playing
one down.
back then.
That's a different band. That's Dead or Alive.
That's Dead or Alive, but it was the same. How would I say? They were on the same rotation in the club. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll explain to you why a little bit later down in the story, because it just 1984 got progressively crazier.
Okay,
and funner. I don't.
Let's get to the music quick because I want to hear about your stories. Right. Yeah. So we crossed off Dead or Alive, which is another big dance single over here. So Frankie's a funny one because the BBC had a show called Top of the Pops.
Mm-hmm.
Your band hadn't made it until your band was on Top of the Pops, basically.
Yes.
It went on for about 30 years, this program, I think. At the end of the day, it's not on anymore. But BBC were very sensitive about music that they would play on that show, and obviously Frankie got to #1. And Relax is all about sex, basically.
Yes.
When you want to come.
Yes. Absolutely.
The BBC didn't get it, right? They didn't get the sexual connotations of it at all. So it was kind of the first time ever a #1 single that was purely about deep and dirty sex.
Yeah, I mean, over here
played on the BBC, right? Yeah. And they got away with it. Yeah, completely.
Yeah, over here we had Prince that was talking about that.
Yeah.
He had like Erotic City, and they would play it on the radio. They didn't even realize what the guy was saying.
Exactly.
And for us, it wasn't that much of a shocker, but it was more the energy of the song, and that they would play it on the radio just at the right time. At the end of 1984 is when, I was really listening to that a lot. There was so many hits. It was just like an overload of music, and this is, 1984 was the first year that I enjoyed happiness for the very first time. The only bad thing is that, so what happened to me in 1984, just really quick for the listeners here, is I grew a beard, right? The beard that you see today,
wow,
started growing, back then. So I looked a lot older than some of my classmates, right? So, I was still, sophomore in high school, and this young 21-year-old lady took a real liking to me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But she had the worst taste in music. Right. Holy shit. It was, I love spending time with her, but the music, my God, it was all the stuff that I didn't want to hear. It was, Lionel Richie. Right. It was the soundtrack from Footloose. I'll Say with, Paul McCartney, Michael Jackson, Phil Collins after Genesis, like Against All Odds, she would play. She would play Hello by Lionel Richie.
That's a passion killer, isn't it? Against All Odds. Jesus Christ.
And, we were, so I'll take you back and when, what was this song? All Night Long, right? She was a real big fan of Lionel Richie, and she liked All Night Long, and she liked Hello. So, I was just excited, I was just excited to be there with a woman for the very first time in my whole life, right?
Yeah.
So she's driving, you know. So I'm like this real cool cat that gets picked up after school by this woman, and she's driving me around town, right? She takes me to work, picks me up out of work, whatever. And next to my job was a park, right? There was a park there. And, you know, she said, well, this is it. You know, today's the day. This is going to happen, right? So I'm fresh off of work. And she takes me over to the parking lot of the park there. And we're going at it. You know, we're having a great time. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of taking a break, you know, because I'm tired. And I look up and I see this big flashlight in my face, right? And in the background, is Lionel Richie singing to me, hello.
Jesus.
And it's the police, right? And it's the police. And of course, you know, we have to get dressed and everything, you know, because they're there, you know, and I guess somebody called the cops or whatever because we weren't paying attention. And they ask her, you know, they're questioning her and they ask her for her ID. You know, of course, she pulls out her driver's license. They ask me for an ID, and I pull out my my school ID, and the cop looks at her dead in the eye and goes, "Do you know we can take you to jail for this?"
Yeah.
Right. And then the other cops looking at me, right? The other cop looks at me dead in the eye and goes,
Yeah.
and they let us go. You know, they're just like, hey, don't park anymore, whatever. Just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they let us go.
And party car here, wink. Yeah. You wouldn't get away with that. You probably wouldn't get away with that now. That's the thing, right? You know, you wouldn't get away with that now.
I would never press charges. Ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I didn't see an older woman. Well, that's not true. Not a really older woman until a bit later on. But yeah, 84 was my coming of age. Really, I mean, I've been down that path, should we say, at an earlier age, but I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. You know, fumbling around and doing what I thought was right. You know, remembering all of those Penthouse magazines that I'd been reading over the years. Right. 16 was yeah, for me it was the year that I sort of came of age, because it was my first holiday, what we used to call in England a lad's holiday. So a group of you would go, same age. You'd go abroad, you go to Spain, which is still the Englishman's playground of choice. Okay. Ibiza became it after a while, but you know, so a group of us, six of us, yeah, 6 of us went over. We're all 16. It's all our first holiday away without family and everything. I actually can't believe my mum and dad let me sort of like gave me their consent, as it were, because they were quite sort of, you know, conservative in their ways. And it was just amazing. It was just 14 days of partying, drugs, and and women. It was just ridiculous, right? I went over there a boy and I came back a man. It just seemed whatever you did, you would end up enjoying yourself that evening, if you know what I mean. It was just amazing.
Yes.
So yeah, that was just an experience for me. Went to a place called Lloret de Mar in Spain. And during the day it was just great, beach, whatever, girls, bikinis, volleyball, right? Back to the hotel, quick shower, something to eat, hit the clubs, just hit the clubs all night, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just the best. I think, you know, that was the best. I've been on a few more since those lads' holidays, from between 16 and 20. I think I went on every year. Have you ever heard "Boys and Girls" by Blur?
By Blur?
Blur, no. Boys and Girls. It's literally, right. I don't have to explain anymore. Just link that in the chat when this goes out, right? It's basically about a bunch of lads and what they get up to on holiday, right? That was my holiday. It was just absolutely amazing. The best thing that came out of it, it's the year I stayed at the same school, but so I went from school to college, The college was based at the same place. And I came back, and all the stories of me and my conquests on holiday were being spoken of. And I remember walking into my history lesson. I was taking history, and my teacher just looked me in the eye and he went, you had some kind of holiday there, Alan, did you? And I went, yeah. And he went, yeah, good for you. So it was kind of that cop moment, yeah. But it was one of my sort of like teachers saying it to me.
It gives you a different kind of swagger. Let me tell you. I mean,
I lived off that holiday for about a year, and then it all came back to reality.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, from having, you know, a woman drop me off at school, you know, and driving me around, it was great. I mean, nothing to do with that summer. So in that summer, you know, there's a lot of partying.
Yeah,
there was a lot of great music. You know, there's the Depeche Mode was coming out. I think people were sitting here. We're getting stuff like the Thompson Twins. I remember a great song by David Bowie called Blue Jean. You know, there's always your Billy Idols with the, you know, Flesh for Fantasy. I was a huge fan of Billy Idol. And of course, what we talked about, Talk with their album, you know, It's My Life is I believe in that album, correct?
Yes, yeah, you're correct. Yeah. I'll tell you what, a massive single was on that holiday. Hit it all the time, actually, and it's one of those songs that, I mean, there was a Madonna holiday that year, right? So that was played an awful lot, right? Obviously,
yes.
And there was some cheesy stuff. That was also the thing in Britain as well. You went away on holiday in the summer, and whatever you heard, the kids brought back with them, right? And it got to number one, and it might be the most obscure record of all time, right? There were some really awful things that people brought back with them because the foreign DJs used to play that song all the time, yeah. So you were getting a lot of sort of cross European hits at that point. But do you remember Shannon? Let the Music Play. Do you remember that single?
Yes.
Oh my God, that is a banger still today. I swear blind. That is a banger still today.
Yeah, you know, I used to listen to it for breakfast while I was playing video games.
Oh, I can just remember that song came on and you just headed to the floor because you knew a load of girls would be on the dance floor. And whether you liked it or not, right?
Exactly.
Like you said about musical taste, I actually loved that some of my other friends were like, nah. And I went, believe me, you head to the dance floor right now. Okay. So that was a great single. I remember that was massive in all of the clubs that year.
You know, we had a great influence of music. You know, on MTV, you had stuff like the Eurythmics were coming out, and you know, we talked about West End Girls, but West End Girls and the Bronski Beat, Tell Me Why, were big hits at the club. And let me tell you something. Remember how I told you, we were talking about before, how we took our dress code from Duran Duran and the Please Please Tell Me Now video?
Yeah.
Right. That was how we were dressed. The only difference is that,
see, the thing is, right, I know that video and I'm looking at you now, right? And I'm thinking, how?
Yeah. So, you know, just imagine a big old mullet, a thin kind of beard, you know, and I was a lot thinner back then. But anyway, the only difference is at nighttime, that's when the eyeliner would come on. And that's the movement you guys had out there. What was it called? Oh, geez. There was a whole movement when it came to that kind of music with Boy George. And
you have a think, right? I just want to tell everybody in the chat, the Rambler Man never wore eyeliner. I just want everybody to know that. So what were you talking about? So the fashion, what it was called?
Yeah. I forget what it was called.
New Romantics.
New Romantics. That's what it was.
No, it wasn't.
But anyway. But you know, it wouldn't go on until we actually got to the club, and in the club was something else. Now, these were all underground clubs, and we found the greatest at that point, the greatest club that we thought we had ever seen in the planet. Okay, so I want you to imagine a bunch of teenagers dressed in, you know, like I'm describing. You know, a lot of them look like, you know, they stepped straight out of MTV videos. I mean, that's how we would dress, right? And we go into this club, which is actually a Chinese restaurant. Okay, the club is actually a Chinese restaurant, and they've cleared all the tables to turn it into a dance floor, except for one or two tables. One of them to take in the tickets, and there's another table in the back where there's a guy. Right. And I just want you to picture this. This guy must have had, you know, say a half a key on this glass table.
Right.
And he's just sitting there distributing. He's actually selling the lines to teenagers openly. Like, you know, most people didn't even know what was going on. And we would listen to this music all night. And, you know, we were buying booze. I mean, it was just great. It was amazing, you know, and, we'd be getting out of there, 2, 3 in the morning. And that summer was it just took us to a whole different place.
Yeah.
100%. You know what I'm saying? And then we come back, you know, Monday morning, go back to work.
Yeah.
I wear the hat, have the beard. Then I'd look like this back on Monday morning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I said about that summer. Before that summer, you know, we used to have house parties and all that kind of stuff as you do as a teenager. And at that time, it you know, it was great. And then that holiday and that summer just moved things to such a different level. You couldn't go back from it. And I think that coming of age for me, and not even just the people that went on that particular holiday with me, but you know, it just seemed to be that summer for virtually everybody just stepped up that gear. I didn't. I must admit, I wasn't doing a lot of coke at that time, but sort of amphetamines and speed. I was doing a lot of that dirty stuff at the time, which is horrible now when you look back at it, right? But
yeah, it's terrible.
It was cheap, it was cheap and available.
Yeah, and you know, we didn't like doing weed because we were like, wait a minute, you know, I spent all this time, you know, on all this clothes, on doing my hair, right, doing all these things. I don't want to smell like weed, you know, and then have this expensive cologne on, because I mean, we would look for fashion on GQ magazine, you know, we would look for fashion on MTV. So it just seemed like a dirtier thing to do. And you know, when you just took a bump, it's just you're still clean, you don't smell like anything, and you just keep on going. I mean, we had no idea what we were doing, you know. I mean, you're just so young. You know, things you would never do now. And, you know, when we look back at it, you know, we're with my friends and I were at least two of them were very lucky that we never got hooked on any stuff like that, you know. And I'm probably like the wrong person to talk to if you have any kind of struggle, because I had a great time. I never, you know, I don't do it now because, you know, I'm in my 50s, you know, I'm a married man, I'm a serious person. That I was, you know, 30 plus years ago.
It's a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage, though, isn't it? It's something all kids have got to go through. And I mean, I don't know, you've got grown-up kids, I've got grown-up kids, and it is difficult when your kids get to that age, because you know exactly what they're going to be doing, right?
Yeah, and you know, what do you say?
What do you say? Are you going to be the biggest hypocrite in the world and go, "Don't do that, don't try that, I don't approve," or do you actually be cool about it, or do you be too cool about it, or can you get that? Can you get that middle ground where you give them a wink and say, well, you know, I wouldn't do that if I was you, or whatever? It's difficult. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, when we, you know, some of the advantages we have, like nobody cared back then. You know, they really didn't.
No, they didn't.
Like they do now. Number one, you know. Number two is I have a lot of friends now of people that we used to know. They used to be crazy partiers, you know, and now they're ultra conservative. You know, they're like super religious and this and that and the other, you know. And I sometimes I have to remind them, hey, you know, remember when you take those 2 tabs of acid and you're trying to swim naked in Santa Monica?
Yeah.
You know, and now they're swung completely the other way. But you know, those memories are still there. Sometimes when I hear them talk, I just give them that wink, like, I remember.
No, I mean, I just gave my kids advice. If you're going to go down that route, okay. One of them did, one of them didn't. My daughter just hasn't ever taken drugs. Well, alcohol, yeah, but never taken drugs. My son, on the other hand, very much took after his old man. The apple didn't fall very far from the tree for that one. And it is difficult, but having been through it, you kind of know the pitfalls, don't you? So I think they're fortunate because I couldn't speak to my old man about it. He wouldn't have had a clue. if he'd have had any kind of sense that I was doing that, I would have probably got a smack around the head,
Yeah.
because it wasn't the done deal. But we were fortunate because that kind of period is kind of termed in the UK as the first summer of love. That's how we actually we termed it, because sort of 84 to 88, dance music was coming along, drugs were easier to get hold of. And then, of course, we went into the 90s, and then we had, ecstasy, which was just a completely different. We'll get there soon. That was just a completely different thing altogether, right?
Well,
that literally was life changing. That was a life changing time.
I never got there. I never got there because by that time I was married.
Right.
Like, once I got married, I completely quit everything cold turkey.
I
would have a beer once in a while.
So was I, right? But it didn't seem to slow me down too much. All right.
Married on ecstasy. Those stories you gotta hear.
We'll get to those stories later. Yeah, but that really was a life affirming time. But yeah, we caught that kind of. I was lucky, really. I got to see kind of two stages of that, so I consider myself quite lucky. But yeah, I totally get what you mean about 84 being a step up for that kind of stuff. And even the house parties got crazier after that too. The same people would have house parties, and you think back and go, God, Jesus, that one we had in like February, March was tame. How tame was that, right? This is much better. This is much better.
Oh man!
So yeah, it was a good year.
The period of time for us here in California was the 80s, and we call it the big 80s for a reason.
Yeah,
people had money, and a lot of my friends' parents were going on holiday and leaving them at home.
Yeah,
you leave teenagers at home. What do you think's going to happen?
It wasn't like that over here at all. 84. 84 was quite a political year. Now, it even was in music, right? Because biggest single of the year was Band-Aid. Do They Know It's Christmas, right?
Oh man, you know what? And that song,
massive.
Yeah, and you know what? And it was. I like that song more than the USA for Africa song. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
We heard it here on MTV first. Before we did USA for Africa and all that stuff. You guys did it first.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a thing because it literally was an idea developed overnight, really. You had Midge and you had Bob Geldof. Midge was in Ultravox. You mentioned Ultravox earlier on. And they just said, well, we want to do something. And then just all these bands kept turning up at the studio. And there's a crazy video where they called out and just said, any bands that are available, come in, we'll do a single. We've written it. And just everybody just kept turning up. U2 turned up, Bono turned up, Sting turned up.
Oh my gosh,
Elton John, and just everybody, and it was mad. And it was.
And YouTube had a big album, right? Was it?
Yeah, Unforgettable Fire that year. Yeah,
Unforgettable Fire. That's right.
A lot of people were thinking, right, is these guys doing it for promote? I mean, and they could very well. I mean, the skeptic amongst us would say, yeah. Some of the bands that turned up weren't exactly in their pomp, and once they turned up and they were there, they had a resurgence in their career. And then you obviously had Live Aid, and all of
Live
that
Aid
came
was
with
big.
it. But over here, you're saying it's really funny because you're saying the big 80s because of money. It really wasn't like that. And we partied because it wasn't like that, not because we had money. It was because it was a very grim time in the UK. So we had Margaret, whether you like it or you don't, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister. There were a lot of unionized strikes. So the coal miners went on strike, and there used to be battles on the picket line. It was just really crazy times, the 80s, things like that. Things that wouldn't happen in your country, but it's a very European thing, that, strikes and, riots and stuff. But it was great. We didn't have money. We really didn't have money. So that's quite an interesting thing to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, what we had was work. You know, when I say we had money, it was work, and there were still people, talking about the environment and stuff like that. But most everybody was like, you know what, just shut up, just shut up and go party, because everybody was having a great time. It was just such consumerism, and we really had a lot of work. And at that point, we were reaping the benefits out of, as a community in the Hispanic community, we were really reaping the benefits out of legalization, and having more people legally working, and now they've been there in the companies, because I believe this happened in 80, 81. So by 84, people were well entrenched in new jobs and higher paying jobs, and actual jobs.
It was totally the other way. It was totally the other way around. The government was closing a lot of these coal mines, and industry was shutting down all over the place. So you actually had towns that were built around these industries, steelworks, coal miners, and they were just decimated, because once you closed the main source of income, like you say, so the town was really there to support whatever that industry may be: cotton, steel, coal. They were being closed down. So once you closed down that center where the people got their money from, these towns were like ghost towns. They were decimated, So it was important. It was a hugely political year for music in this country. I mean, I don't know if you heard of a guy called Billy Bragg.
No.
Billy Bragg. Oh, you'd love Billy Bragg. There's one for you. You'd love Billy Bragg. He's kind of a one man and a guitar, and he sings love songs and political songs. And he was very big that year. There's all sorts of things going on politically in our country that year. Unemployment was at an all-time high. It couldn't be any different from the picture you just painted, really. So we partied because it was good. We needed to get away from that. We wanted to have something good in our lives, because there wasn't anything good coming through anywhere else at that point, right? So, that's why we did that.
I mean, there were some things going on here, but the U.S. is such a big country that some things are localized. And I'll give you an example. The economy of California is very different, for example, the economy in Pennsylvania, or economies in those states where they're using steel, or say Detroit, or other states that depend on those type of industries. So even though those things might have been going on there, we didn't feel them, and we didn't feel the repercussions right away here. And even as prices were going up, so you have to remember, during these days, video games, relatively, and I was just talking to this, I think I wrote a post with Potion. He was saying how expensive video games are today, right? And people wanted to charge $70.
I know what you're gonna say, but right? Go on.
Yeah. I mean, in relative terms, right? We were paying $100 a game
easily. Yeah.
Back then, and we were still doing it. We're still doing it. I mean, we're still, we would borrow games here and there, but most people that had video games, they were buying multiple video games.
Yeah.
So, and that's a luxury. That's not something that was a necessity.
That's what drove me into the music and the industry and the entertainment industry like it was, because I think I said to you on the first one, why did you get into it? I got into it because all those physical products that I loved, I could either get them for free or I could pay half price, with discount, with start discount and stuff. So, that was a major drive to do that, because if I hadn't have got a job in a music store at an early age, I wouldn't have half the things I have now, because literally I either, this is what made me laugh. I mean, I think I said in one of my first videos, people talking about shilling, getting stuff for free. behave yourself. I love getting stuff for free. Right?
Yeah.
Are you going to play this record for me, Alan, at 12 o'clock? So, the maximum amount of people can hear, and I will give you some free gig tickets. Not a problem,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. It was like, right, yeah, well, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So I'll shield book, not a problem. Any, like I said last week, Maker's Mark, if you were listening, send me those some of those bottles of bourbon over, right? Don't be so precious about it, Don't be so precious about it. I get all the stuff about shilling for the Amico and everything.
Yeah, if there's any alcohol sponsors out there, we'll take them. We will definitely take them.
Well, the less I spend on music, the more I can spend on partying. So there you go. So that was a good enough reason, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think when I think of 1984, I think about so much music. I think about the partying. I think about really enjoying my teenage years. I know that not a lot of people get to do that, and a lot of people, we couldn't have this conversation, right? Because they were having a completely different experience than I were. I know that I have friends right now that were miserable, literally miserable. When I'm there, wilding out, and I'm having the 21-year-old girlfriend when I was 15 and stuff like that. They're just
no. I'm. This is one of my strongest sort of like beliefs in life. You never leave a man behind, right?
Yeah.
In anything, even the guys with the shyest guys, or the guys with the worst fashion sense, whatever it was, the nerd, whatever. We tried to pull them up with us. We weren't having it. You're not having a good time. Why are you not having a good time? Come with us. You can have a good time. So that was a bit. That was like a big. That was 84 for me. I mean, even we talked briefly about films, but I think the mood, even though it was grim times in our country, we saw out the better times. So we even spoke about films behind the scenes. But yeah, had great fun stuff like Ghostbusters, Gremlins, Police Academy, Karate Kid. Yeah. These are all great films to this day. Funny, etc. Do you know what? I was trying to think what my favorite film was, and I remember.
Well, there was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
There was all sorts of things like yeah. But my favorite film that I can backseat in the cinema, one of those jobs, yeah. Where I first got my first cinema blowjob was the film. Do you remember Top Secret? It was a parody movie, right?
Yeah, it was Val Kilmer, remember?
Yes, my man.
Yes.
Top Secret. To this day, for that very reason, I have such fond memories of Top Secret. I lost my cinema cherry to that movie. So anytime I can watch that film, it cheers me up.
You'll watch it again. Oh man, it was a great. Top Secret was great, and I remembering watching it on cable religiously too when it came out.
Yeah,
it was.
There was just a few videos. I mean, that was videos was starting around about that time. I just remember some of those cheap sort of comedy things like the Kentucky Fried Movie. Do you remember that movie? Ever seen that movie?
Yes.
The shower scene in Kentucky Fried Movie, right? I wouldn't even know where you'd be able to stream that movie these days, right? But one of the greatest sequences in cinema history.
And and there was also movies like we were talking about the influence of electronic in rap. Breaking came out. That movie Breaking came out in 84, right?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
I remember watching Revenge of the Nerds too. I think that was from that time.
Yeah, man. I mean, Breaking, hip hop, electro, totally still buzzing around that time. I didn't really want to concentrate on that because I spoke about that, so much the last time we did it. But yeah, absolutely, it was popping off then. I mean, white. Again, another one I remember the clubs, White Lines, because it was Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel.
Oh yes.
Again, good times for that one. Or
Well,
Yeah,
in that club,
yeah,
after that guy would set up,
yeah,
whenever you heard that song, he was ready because the DJ was in it too. I mean,
yeah,
everybody was in it,
exactly.
right? They play the song and you just okay, line up.
Yeah,
Afterwards, after people found out what it was and stuff like that, people would go into the bathroom. But I'm telling you,
yeah,
walking into that place, I wish they would make a movie about that where it's just like
yeah,
some guys just at a table going, "How much you want?"
yeah. That was
Oh
a
man.
a massive, yeah, for that very reason. That was a massive tune in the summer period that year. Fantastic.
Yeah, let me tell you, when you said no man left behind, let me tell you what I did
Yeah.
in the sophomore year. So we had this little group of guys, the same ones that would go out to that we found this club. We were throwing parties during the summer, right? And I wanted to graduate school as soon as possible, not because I wasn't having a great time. I just really wanted to get to work, and make more money. That was kind of my
Yeah.
goal. And I don't know how your school was set up. And this doesn't happen in schools now, typically here in the US, but we had what's called an open campus. You
Right.
could just walk out of school at any time.
Yeah.
Right?
Same here.
And
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So I was going to summer school every year. And that summer, we were throwing house parties. We had a couple of friends whose parents were on holiday. And I'm talking about big homes with swimming pools.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like paradise, right? So we were throwing house parties. And this is how I started, just so you know what kind of individual I was back then. I get in the first day of summer school and I look at the teacher straight up and I said, "How many days can I miss?" Right.
Yeah.
And he looks at me like, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, how many days can I miss? And also, how many times can I be late?" And he looks at me, he was like, "You're gonna be trouble."
Yeah.
And he tells me like 3, But anyway, I was taking history for the summer. And I had some Asian friends, and just like I liked Asian ladies, they like Hispanic girls, right? And these are the kind of kids that were sheltered. This is about the only free time they had, because their parents, of course, were very strict on education, but their parents thought they were going to school, so they thought they were going to school until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? But summer school ends at 12. So I told them, "Okay, look, you're going to help me out with this class, and you're in the party. You're going to get in there. You're with me."
Yeah.
So, but I don't want A's. I think A's are going to look too suspicious. We want
All
B's.
right.
To throw an A once in a while. Give me a C. Let's make it look like we're doing something here.
Yeah.
So they were doing all my work, and sure enough, man, I introduced these young men to the finer things in life, and a
Wow.
couple of them still appreciate me because I made
That is your
their
credit. That is your credit. We didn't have summer school. I would think every kid in Britain would have rebelled, absolutely rebelled, if we'd have had anything like summer school. We don't have anything like that. I think the only time you would have had kind of summer school was Sunday classes, religion, something like that. I never attended anything like a summer school when I was growing up. I would have.
Yeah, summer school serves two purposes over here. I mean, the education in the U.S., I don't know if you know, it's really bad. It's unless you're paying for education.
It ain't great over here unless you pay for it. Yeah.
So, but it serves two purposes. It serves a purpose of younger students taking extra classes and older students going back and redoing some classes that they didn't pass, right?
Yeah.
So, and it gives the teachers extra work. So it's, I don't know how it is now. I mean, this is back in 1984, we're talking about, but yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. But I remember this one teacher, he was my favorite. It was this guy, he was the football coach, and he would come in to substitute some days. And this guy would come in hung over.
Yeah.
I mean, completely hung over, and would tell us, "Hey, you guys, look, I'm in trouble here." This older white gentleman, hey guys, look, I'm in trouble here. You guys work amongst yourselves and I'm gonna take a 50, okay? just walk out, we're just talking to the class. He was my favorite teacher of all time.
Well, I mean, here's one thing that would never happen these days. We had the biggest kind of scandal in my day at school was our physical ed teacher, I think you call them, or PE teachers as we call them. We had a guy called, ironically, Mr. Wood, right? Okay, yeah, that was his name. And I had a biology teacher called Mrs. Love, right? Yeah.
Oh, man.
She was so fit as well. That's another story. Yeah, he actually, so the grading of school was, you got to the end of, I don't know what you would call it, high school, or what would be the equivalent to what we did. And then you could either go to a college separately, or you could stay on if your college had what they call a sixth form college, do a couple of years there. And then you went on to university. So 16 to 18, you stayed at sixth form college. Where our phys ed teacher, Mr. Wood, actually knocked up one of the sixth form girls. So she was 18. So she wasn't legal age, yeah, but he made her pregnant, and he kept his job. Can you imagine that these days?
No.
He married her. He had to marry her, kind of thing, to make it all kind of legal and above board and everything. But he kept his job. Can you imagine that now? Can you imagine a teacher, knocking up an 18-year-old and keeping his job?
I mean, there's some really weird things going on with teachers over here, but I don't imagine that.
No, and it was a scandal and everything, but he kept his job and everything. It was quite weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when I hear these, we were talking with my friends about this, and because the younger people were talking, and the wives were talking about how shocking this was, that this woman teacher had taken advantage of some boys, and we're just looking at each other like, that wouldn't have been a real big deal back when we were going to school. I mean,
you wouldn't even have thought of it. Yeah,
we would be getting high fives and stuff. It's like, but it's different times. It's different times. And those are the things that we miss. And these times, they're not coming back. There might be people listening to this broadcast that couldn't even fathom these things happening, right? I'm sure they had great times also, but I think that the freedoms we had, as far as just
so like I said, I think we were very lucky. I feel lucky that not only did I get to experience that kind of feeling once, I got into my 20s and it happened again. I mean, how good is that?
I mean, nowadays they have drugs that kill you. What is this fentanyl stuff? I mean, nowadays I don't know what the hell's going on there, but I'm sure glad that we had the times
I keep in touch just because I have kids of an age that you think, right, well, I need to know what's know what's out there just in case, really. But I haven't done anything seriously for a very long time, so you kind of grow out of that, don't you?
Yeah,
unfortunately you do.
you have to, but you look back with fondness. You look back with fondness at those times.
And 85 didn't slow down.
Oh no! It just
there you go. There's a link to your next episode. I became a DJ in '85, so there's some more stories.
My gosh! Yeah. It's then we got to hear that. We got to hear that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, sir. Thank you for joining another week. And
I'm sorry to have taken up everybody who hasn't heard the news about young Mr. Generation X gamer who's sitting next to me. Congratulations on your news. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Cheers. He's
only allowed 7 hours a week to do his YouTubing, and we've just spent 1 hour and 15 minutes, I think, something like that. So I apologize to you. I apologize to the audience.
But it's my favorite hour, because I get to reminisce about the old days, and and I saw a video because like I told you before, people judge you by the way you look, right? Now. Right. And when I tell you about the new romantics, and I'm looking at it, and people look at me like, this guy right here.
Yeah.
Right. It's a It's a slice of time. That's all it is.
Well, there's a few more fashion faux pas to get through yet. I mean, let's leave it for now. Let's carry on. But I mean, I'm just hoping you're not going to turn around to me and tell me you're going to tell me you were a goth later on in the 80s. But don't say anything now.
No.
Save it till later. Shush. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll catch you on the next one, guys. Stay tuned for 1985. It's about to get very, very interesting.
Cheers. See you later.
Take care.
Bye.